Here with me is Copenhaver, and she will review the role technology can play in combating social isolation for both the caregiver and the care receiver. Lots to learn. Welcome, Kai.
Thank you. And thank you all out there for joining us today. We're going to talk about the intersection of caregiving, social isolation, and technology. And what does that really mean for you and me? My name is Kai Copenhaver, and I have several letters behind my name, and I'll explain those. First of all, I'm a registered health information administrator, which means that I can work in the medical records field and deal with confidentiality and privacy and security. I'm also an RCFE, that stands for Residential Care Facility for the Elderly Administrator. And finally, I am a senior home safety specialist. So I can go in and assess a home for safety and the various needs within a home. So I am part of Aging Well Partners. I am a co-founder. And Aging Well Partners exists to empower the aging adult in finding vetted and trusted resources and services that meet their specific needs. We are all certified senior advisors, and we do free consultations. So let's talk about the intersection of caregiving, social isolation, and technology. It's kind of a big bite to chew on, but in the middle of that Venn diagram is the aging adult. And so we're gonna talk about how they all fit together and how they work, and sometimes how they don't work. So these stats are from the National Coalition of Aging Adults, and these stats I found a little bit alarming. You can see as in 2015 there were 43.5 million caregivers in the United States. In 2020, just a year ago, there's now 53 million. 19% of those caregivers are providing unpaid care. That typically means families, friends, loved ones. In 2015, 19% of family caregivers were having problems coordinating the care that they were giving. In 2020, that number rose to 26%. And in 2015, 22% were caring for someone with dementia, Alzheimer's or some other form of dementia. That's gone up to 26% in 2020. And in 2015, 17% of caregivers reported their own health as being fair to poor. That's 17%. In 2020, that's gone up to 21%. I think that those numbers are, that's self-reported, so those numbers might even be underreported. But a rise in all of those numbers with regard to caregiving, and mostly it's informal caregiving is what they call that. It's not that you're going through an agency and paying for somebody to come in and care. It's a family, it's a friend, it's a spouse, it's a loved one, it's a neighbor that's doing the caregiving. So let's take a look at who is that caregiver. 61% of caregivers are women. I don't know if that's terribly alarming, but 61% are women, 39% are men, and 61% of caregivers, these informal caregivers, work on top of doing caregiving. You can see the breakdown in the pie chart of who all is doing the caregiving. 34% of those caregivers are 65 years or older, according to the National Alliance for Caregiving and AARP. 47% of the care recipients, people receiving the care, are 75 years old or older. And we're finding that older caregivers are more likely to be caring for a spouse or a partner. And the average age of a spousal caregiver is 62.3. So those caregivers, those informal caregivers, are typically spouses, and the age of that caregiver is typically 62 years old. In our experience in Aging Well Partners and being certified senior advisors, we're seeing more and more spouses caring for 90-year-old and over parents as well as their spouses who are probably in their 60s or 70s. That's a lot for anyone, let alone being 62 and caring for a spouse and potentially a parent. And also maybe still working and taking care of some grandkids. So there's an irony in caregiving. So caregiving, right? You're giving care to someone. And the irony of that is that 23% of those caregivers said that their health has deteriorated as a result of caregiving. And roughly 30% of caregivers will die before the person that they're actually caring for. The others will suffer some sort of non-life-threatening illness or injury. One of the biggest ones that we see is depression and also autoimmune diseases. We ran into an example of this. We had a granddaughter frantically call us. She was on the East Coast. She had just been informed by the Sheriff's Department that her grandfather had passed suddenly of a heart attack, and her grandmother, who had dementia, who her grandfather was taking care of, she was at the hospital because there was no one in the home to take care of her. And so she needed to figure out how to get from the East Coast to California and make sure that her grandmother, who was sitting in a hospital somewhere in California, was taken care of and got the care that she needed. So we see this, it's sad and it's true. And 30% of those folks are going to pass before the person that they're caring for. So let's move on to social isolation. And I wanted to quickly just make the distinction between isolation and loneliness. So we all feel lonely at times in our lives, and that's not quite what I'm talking about. Social isolation and loneliness are related, but they're different. So loneliness is distressing feelings of being alone or being separated, whereas isolation is the lack of social contacts and social interaction and having very few people to interact with on any kind of regular basis. So I can be in a room full of people and still experience feeling lonely. Isolation is being cut off from that whole room of people. So some of the effects and signs of social isolation to look for are high blood pressure, heart disease, obesity, depression and anxiety. We're seeing a lot of that right now, especially given the social isolation that has come out of the pandemic. Cognitive decline as a result of social isolation, and then a weakened immune system. And that's for a number of different reasons, one of which might be just not getting out, not being able to get out and get some exercise. So then your immune system is weakened. That could also be as a result of nutritional issues. So as we age, our risk of becoming socially isolated and or lonely, it increases. That's just the fact of it. And this is due to many, many factors, some of which might include the death of a spouse or a significant other. It could be financial reasons, and it could be age discrimination, or it could be decreased mobility and decreased vision and decreased hearing capabilities. There's a lot of other reasons that these could happen, but these are some of the bigger ones. Social isolation isn't just a one-person phenomenon, especially when one spouse is potentially thrust into becoming the primary caregiver for the other spouse. And now each one of them in their own way becomes socially isolated. And when you have a spouse caring for another spouse, the playing field, the relationship is no longer an equal relationship. You're no longer partners in life. You are partners in life, but one person becomes a partner and a caregiver, and the other person becomes a partner and a care receiver. This is especially prevalent with cognitive issues when you have one spouse that is diagnosed with dementia or a mild cognitive impairment. So caregiver isolation is something that's very prevalent, and it can be very devastating. You would see it when you see somebody withdrawing from family and friends. They become irritable. They become depressed. Maybe some anxiousness around everything. Feelings of helplessness. Changes in sleep patterns. Not being able to sleep. A lot of insomnia. Waking up in the middle of the night. And just not being able to get that solid 6 to 8 hours of sleep, uninterrupted sleep. Changes in eating habits. When you're isolated, sometimes you don't eat or you eat more than is necessary. Exhaustion, both emotional and physical, that relates back to that sleeping patterns. But then the emotional aspect of it is because you're a caregiver and you maybe just don't feel like you have that social support system anymore, or not as much anymore. There's more focus on the other as a caregiver. You're focused more on the person that you're giving care to and less on self. And then withdraw from a previous lifestyle or activities in a previous lifestyle. So you stop going to the coffee klatch, or you stop going to dance lessons and things of that nature. We have worked with husband and wife that were world travelers, and they lost their best friends and travel companions, and then the companions that they did have, the travel companions that they did have, stopped coming around once the wife was diagnosed with Parkinson's. Sometimes a spouse will lose their spouse with dementia as the dementia progresses. It's called the long goodbye. The spouse doesn't die, but you lose them daily, little by little, and that can lead to some definite isolation, both for the caregiver and the care recipient. So let's look at hopefully some solutions to help out with this caregiving and social isolation as they interact and touch one another, the overlap of the two. So the main ones that we know, most of us know about, are computers and tablets and cell phones, right? We can get on the computer and we can do FaceTime. We can get on the cell phone and do FaceTime if you have an iPhone. You can get on a computer or a tablet and do Skype. You can do Google Chat. You can do a Zoom, which is more of a meeting type. So I realized that I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have an iPhone, and so I didn't do FaceTime. But if you have a Gmail account and you can do Google Chat, there's a way to do a video chat through Google, through Gmail. There are lots of games that you can play as a caregiver and as a care recipient that keep you engaged, keep your mind working. Things like solitaire, mahjong. Luminosity is a paid subscription where it's brain games that are scientifically formulated to keep your brain active and keep those synapses firing. Words with Friends is a game now online where you can actually be you can be competing against a lot of different people that you don't even know. They're in different states, different countries potentially, but you can be doing the game with them, and that definitely keeps your mind sharp and maybe adds some frustration to your day. I've never played it. I don't think I want to, because I think I would probably get frustrated with Words for Friends or with friends. You can attend, and we're doing it right now. You can attend events online via webinars and live casts. You can do seminars. You can sign up for courses. Oasis might be a good idea. They offer a lot of different seminars and courses. You can attend concerts online, so virtually you can attend concerts. You don't have to go out unless you can get out, and then go see that concert in person if you can. These are opportunities to engage your mind, to engage some social activity, and it's an opportunity to connect with other people, maybe other caregivers. There are caregiver support groups, and they can understand what you're dealing with and the feelings that you might be having. So there's all sorts of kind of cool things out there right now with regard to technology. As you can see, so we all have probably seen the medication box, and that's very manual. They now have medication boxes that will hook up to your smartphone if you have one, and they will remind you when to take various medications. Hydration bottles that light up when it's time for you to hydrate. There's health and well-being. You can do yoga online. You can do all sorts of classes online. And there's incontinence technology that tells you when a bladder is full. It's like a sonogram. It tells you when your bladder's full. It can tell you if you're on the verge of a urinary tract infection. There's a lot of different technology out there right now. And a lot of different apps, if you have cell phones again, smartphones, that can help you with a lot of the health and well-being issues that caregivers face, and care recipients as well. So I think that there's a lot of thinking outside of the box that needs to be done, that is being done with regard to the technology and social isolation, and also working with the caregiver so that the caregiver doesn't suffer something serious or some sort of illness and then not be able to be the caregiver that they are. So with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you so much, Kai. Definitely lots to think about. Whether we're ready or not, we will be caregiving at some point. And I know there's probably no course you can sign up to be ready to be a caregiver. Like you said, sometimes it's upon us, and we need to rise to the occasion and become an instant caregiver. Thank you for pointing out some excellent technology tools that can help us stay well and healthy, and also figuring out what can help my loved one that I'm caregiving for. Any tips? So the first question coming in here from the audience is, could you talk a little bit about how do you create motivation for someone who's not comfortable using technology? You've mentioned some gadgets that we could, pill boxes and lighting up and things you can probably find online. How do you create motivation where people say, I'm too old, I don't do technology, I can't. What would be your response?
It's a great question, and I always think of my father, because my father refuses to deal with a cell phone. He doesn't know how to work it. He doesn't get on the computer. And so I use him as my example of how would I get someone that isn't tech savvy to maybe engage and start to use some of this technology. And the first thing would be to take some classes. And I would probably, my dad was here, he lives in Montana, but if he was here, I would take him to an Oasis course. I would take him to a beginner computer course and sit with him probably, and just really learn how do you turn it on? What do you do? What don't you do? What does it look like? How do you move the mouse around? Things like that. I mean, there are some very basic classes out there that deal with that. You don't have to go in and think that they're just going to immediately jump to the intermediate stage of computer learning. They really will walk you through how do you turn it on, where is the on button. And so I think that that would be, and you can take those classes, well, online. That sounds kind of funny because you'd have to then turn the computer on to do that. But I would come down here to Oasis and I would take a class. With a cell phone, I might check with the carrier to see what kind of classes they offer. Verizon, I know, offers courses in their stores, or at least they did before the pandemic. Probably getting back to that. So you can go in there and learn how to use the phone's features.
Thank you so much, Kai. We're getting excellent questions in the chat box, so let me go to the next few. This particular question goes back to your comments about UTI. Can you tell us a little bit more about the bladder technology that could be helpful? And then I believe you mentioned an app. Can you tell us more?
Sure. So I really love these products, and these products are offered through one of our Aging Well partners here in San Diego. And there were two photos on that slide. One of them is, it's like an ultrasound technology. So the monitor sits right about bladder level, right about belt level, and it can sense, it can actually look at and tell, and then it has a little readout that will tell someone how full their bladder is. It will say 50%, it will say 25%. And this allows either the person wearing it or the caregiver to take a look and get to a restroom before there's an accident, before there's, there's something that you end up having to go home because it happened. So that is a really swift technology, I think, to be able to say, we're at 70%, we should find a bathroom now. The other piece in there is there are strips that you can buy for either yourself or for the person you're caring for. And what it is it goes inside of a brief or a panty liner, and it will tell you when there's urine on it, it will tell you if you are in the first stages or full stages of a urinary tract infection. It's the same technology, it's the same thing that they do when you go to the doctor's office and you urinate in a cup. They're going to basically dip that into something, and it's like a little strip. And it says, here's where your red blood cell, white blood cell, and proteins and infection are. That strip, they've figured out how to put that into an adult brief or an adult liner, panty liner, and it tells you right then if you should be getting to the doctor for a prescription or for a checkup.
Thank you so much. This was excellent detail, Kai. We appreciate it. Let me go to the next question. So you mentioned a little bit about social isolation and what defines loneliness versus social isolation. What would you say are the tips to know when you're in it? Like, what are you looking for when you're like, okay, now I know what Kai told me. I am socially isolated. I need to do something about it. What would you say that is?
Another great question. I think one of the first things that, as a caregiver, are noticing if you are becoming socially isolated or at risk for that would be the feelings of helplessness, the feelings of hopelessness, feeling like you don't quite know who to call, or you don't feel like you can call anybody that could really help. Just feeling like you're on your own and there's really no one else to turn to. I think that those are the beginning feelings of isolation, and if they're left unchecked, then it can progress into becoming full-on isolated from family and friends and everything that you used to love to do.
Thank you so much, Kai. So if you come back later today and tomorrow, we will be talking more about using robotics, social robots to fight social isolation as one piece of technology. We'll be talking about telephone reassurance program for socially isolated. So we'll be talking a little bit more about some of the social isolation technology solutions. Let me take the next question that's coming from Janet. Janet says, if you're alone and need to hire someone to help care for you, how do you find someone you trust?
Perfect. So that's exactly why Aging Well Partners exists, is me and my other two business partners who co-founded Aging Well Partners, we have put together a list of vetted and trusted partners in all areas that touch on the aging adult. And so right now in San Diego County, there are roughly, at any given time, 200 in-home care agencies. These are folks that come in and do non-medical type of care. That's helping with bathing, grooming, meal prep, light housework, things like that. So I don't know too many people that either have the time or want to call all 200 of them. And then, you know, you really should interview these companies. When you narrow it down to 2 or 3, interview them to see if what they're offering and how they're going to offer it, because everybody does it a little bit differently, is going to fit with your lifestyle and with the needs that you or your loved one have. And so we've done that work and we've vetted these various companies, and there are only a couple of, there's a select few companies that we will work with because we know that they're reputable, they're trustworthy, and that you're going to get what you pay for when you engage them in a contract.
Thank you so much, Kai. Excellent advice for all of us. So the next question is coming in, and it is the following. My friend has a business where she matches family needs with caregivers she has vetted. Do you recommend this route?
Great question. Again, these are some awesome questions. So here's the thing about in-home caregivers. We only work with licensed caregiving. And the state of California recently, they've always licensed in-home care agencies, but they now are putting up these in-home care agencies. They're basically their report card. If they're licensed and through the state of California, their care violation history is available online. And so when I tell people, when somebody says, hey, I have a family friend, or I'm gonna have this person come and do a live-in, I always caution them, because if they're not licensed and they don't have insurance, liability insurance, unfortunately we've seen some bad cases where things were taken, caregivers show up one week, do whatever it is that they do, and they're never heard or seen again. And that's working with a non-licensed company. We always want to work with a licensed company. That's all we'll ever work with. And so if you're going to go the non-licensed route, I'm going to say, do your homework, do your due diligence, do a criminal background check. It costs about $30. Have that done just to see who it is that you're going to have in your home with your loved ones.
Thank you so much. We have time for one last question, and it is coming from someone in Arizona, and I think it's an excellent question. You've mentioned Aging Well Partners here in San Diego County that you can definitely trust to give you some good guidance. But what about outside of San Diego County? Where do you go to find some trusted advisors?
Beautiful. So Aging Well Partners is a national company. We work with vetted partners in other states, and we can find you certified senior advisors to work with, and the various organizations that are vetted and trusted in your area.
Thank you so much. Well, clearly we've all learned a lot about what to think about in caregiving. That's coming to us sooner or later. So appreciate your kind words and good suggestions, Kai. Thank you.
Thank you.